Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Turok Dinosaur Hunter. This game was really good. It really surprised me at just how well made it actually is and how good it felt. It's kind of weird because this is definitely like, a Doom style game. It's a boomer shooter essentially, but on the N64. And I know there was GoldenEye, but the N64 was not known for being a system for shooters at all. But immediately as I played this game, I thought, I don't know, people don't really talk about Turok. Maybe it's not as good as people say, or it's not. It's just like it's an okay game. But I really enjoyed it, and I think a big part of that is the fact that the way, the way it controls is a bit, a bit, retro, I guess you could say. But I was really shocked at the sound effects, the audio design, the gameplay all felt really tight and actually very well done. And frankly, I really enjoyed it. Um, so basically, there's no story. The only dialogue pretty much in the entire game is "I am Turok." That's the only thing he says, which I think is hilarious. And so you basically just start the game in this hub world. And I think what is very interesting about Turok is the way it handles its actual world design is that you have a very kind of standard hub world where you have like this one area where you get essentially all these other portals, and once you go into each level you have to get a series of 3 keys in order to unlock the next level. Sometimes you'll have a mixture of like level 4 and 5 and keys in one level and so on. But what's really interesting about it is that each one of these levels, they essentially the enemies don't respawn, which makes it like a totally interconnected world in the sense that there are some enemies that do respawn, but it's kind of like when you enter the level again, it's kind of, I know it's a hub world, but it's like the environment is permanently changed by your actions, which is makes it feel more like an adventure game than a linear shooter, because you can go back to any level at any time, find a key or whatever that you might have missed, and it makes it feel more like an actual world rather than just a linear game sequence like Star Fox or something, or Devil May Cry, or Call of Duty for that matter. And so it makes Turok feel like an actual world. And that also adds a certain level of difficulty, because if you find yourself in a spot where you've run out of ammo or you've run out of lives and you basically saved, and you don't have any backup lives or backup ammo, there's really nothing you can do except to go backtrack into other areas and find certain things to help you, because yeah, it's kind of like you're kind of screwed at that point. Unfortunately, it didn't happen to me. It's very generous with hiding a lots amount of different kinds of materials and weapons and ammo. And I do have to say that the weapons in this game are really amazing. They're really cool. So of course you have your standard pistol, which, and I'm so glad about this, is when I ever play a shooter that your starting weapon is still useful near the end of the game. So the starting pistol does not a lot of damage, but when you have a lot of enemies, like a lot of very low health enemies that are running around constantly, or sometimes you'll have animals that if you shoot them, they'll drop certain pieces of health as if you were hunting them. Having a pistol is actually a really great, alternative for that, because as you go out through the game, you get other things. So, the upgraded version of the pistol is going to be the assault rifle, which will shoot a 3-round burst. So again, if you want to conserve ammo, it's good to use the pistol only, especially if you're taking out basically guys who die in one hit anyway. Then you have, the classic shotgun that's pump action, and then, the assault or fully automatic version of the shotgun. You also have 3 different plasma weapons, which is really cool. One which acts as kind of like, again, a machine gun. One that acts as kind of like this really cool, it's called the alien weapon. It's basically a cool, lock on, like crossbow thing, and then it explodes, so it does double damage, and it's really great if you're taking out guys and kind of when then they were in super condensed around each other, because it'll leave an explosion, a small one, where that enemy was standing, which is really cool. And then you also have the particle accelerator, which is this really cool thing where It has a good area of effect, and when it kills someone, they'll actually turn yellow and then they'll explode after a few seconds. So it's really good at indicating when an enemy's been taken out, and it's a lot easier on bosses and larger enemies because another thing you can do is you can also charge it up essentially, and it'll make this giant whirring sound, and it'll shoot a different colored particle based on how much you charged, and it's very, very useful against bosses. Aside from that, you also have a grenade launcher, which you don't get for a very long time, but I find it's very, very useful because you'll be collecting grenades for a long time and think, okay, so what am I going to use this for? And again, it's really good for certain heavy enemies and like that. And then finally, oh my god, then you get near the end of the game the quad rocket launcher, which shoots 4 rockets at once, which is really, really cool to use. All the sounds these guns make when they come out feel really, really cool. And, it shoots 4 at a time. It's just really cool. It's really useful for taking down mechs as well. Because it does almost about the same damage as the grenade launcher, I think. It just flies in a straight line, however, across terrain. And then aside of that, you also have the fusion cannon, which is one of the rarer weapons to get at near the end of the game. And it basically makes a nuke. And it is the friggin' coolest effect I've ever seen in a long time. It's really, really cool. And, it has this, red glowing thing as to charge up. And then when the bullet kind of hits, it'll go kind of in whatever direction, but once it hits something, it'll destroy basically everything on screen. It's really, really cool. I did have it glitch a few times though, because it didn't fully do it or something. And of course, when you start the game, you just have a knife, and actually the knife is also again very useful too, because sometimes you'll have these bug enemies that are very hard to shoot because they're moving all over the place. But if you just knife in front of you, it has this huge range of effect that'll take down these very weak enemies very, very quickly. And so even again, I love it when every gun still has a usage, even though you get new upgrades. There's still utility in that weapon. Even at the end of the game. Something else that's cool is you can also pick up special ammo. And oh yeah, I forgot, the final weapon is the bow and arrow. And that does pretty basics damage. But what makes it very useful is when you pick up special ammo for some of these weapons. So for the arrow, you get something like tech arrows, and you can't cycle between ammo types. You just kind of laid over top. Shotguns have explosive shells. I think those are the only two weird ones. And so basically for the tech arrows, they're really, really cool because essentially what they do is they're basically exploding arrows, and they're really great because they always go a huge distance. And again, this game kind of works like GoldenEye, so it's an old school shooter essentially where you don't have a reticle at all, but as long as your general line of sight is within the enemy's range, it'll work, which honestly works pretty well. And yeah, shotguns have exploding shells, which makes it the same, blast, but explosive, so not much change there. And the other thing is, there's actually one final weapon, which is kind of an achievement or unlockable to get, because basically you have to construct a piece of it on every single level, like one of the keys, and it's called the Chronoscepter. And I'm not exactly sure what it shoots or whatever, but basically it only has 3 shots. You have to hold it, charge it up, and when you release it, and basically the final piece is right before the final boss, so that's the only place where you can unfortunately use it. So if you're having difficulty on the final boss, which is honestly very hard, you can basically unlock the Chronoscepter, and it'll take away, if you get all 3 hits, it'll take away almost more than half his health bar, which is really, really great. Yeah. Other kind of pickups include things like spiritual talisman or something, or spiritual invincibility, which is really cool. You also get a bunch of cheat codes at the end of the game in the credits that allow you to, old school unlock things like infinite spirit mode, infinite lives. I'm not sure there's an infinite ammo glitch. But yeah, spirit mode, when you get it, not only does it make you invincible, but it's also really, really cool about it is that it makes everything go in slow motion. And that feels really, really great. And pretty much all your guns work the same, except for things like the rocket launcher and grenade launcher, which will basically also move in slow motion. But yeah, this game has a great assortment of weapons, a great atmosphere, and I thought a pretty good soundtrack as well. It's something I just started playing and it just completely drew me in. Like, I forgot what it felt like with these old school games where you play them and you feel like 100% of your attention is going to the game. I understand why people you know, old school, like they would complain about cutscenes like in Metal Gear Solid, which is kind of understandable. But now I understand, because when you have these old school games that have no cutscenes, no dialogue, no tutorial text, they just like go and shoot and do whatever. I understand why they're so impactful and so interesting, because it just brings your the pacing of your attention to a forefront where you're no longer ripped out of the experience by a cutscene or dialogue or anything. Like, I never ever felt the need to reach for my phone because I was watching or observing something. Like, it is always, always, always asking for your input. And I think it's one of those old school features or styles of gaming that I think we've really lost with the whole cinematic world. Again, some of these respawn points are really cheap. Like, it's really weird how they won't respawn at a certain point. They'll basically, their body will just respawn. I thought I had to like wait there and sit there and wait for them, for their body to disappear, but no, they just constantly respawn to make it fair somewhat, so that you don't just kill everyone and then there's no combat at all, I guess. And again, the game feels kind of short because there's only 8 levels, but each of these levels are really, really big, especially the last one. I thought it was just gonna be, it was called the final confrontation, so I thought it would be a boss fight, but no, it is a long, long level with like multiple save points, at least 3 save points and 6 checkpoints. And so the way the game works is that you know, you can always reload your last save, but if you die, you'll go back to a checkpoint. So, but again, you have limited lives, so it's really difficult to tell if it's worth the risk or not. And so, because the problem is when you run out of lives, you basically have to load your last save. You don't get any more checkpoints, and if you're doing a boss, have to die multiple times. That's really, really difficult to swallow, I guess. On the bosses, I really liked them. I thought they were all really well designed. I mean, the first one, it was really, really hard, where basically you have this these 2 jeeps that are driving around, and you basically need to learn. You basically learn from very early on that you have to always, always strafe. And by the end of this game, I was strafing everywhere. Like, I just had the map open, and it was a Doom style map where, like, you know, the thing fills out as you go through it. And I was just going sideways throughout the whole map, and it felt like a different game almost. It's actually almost like a racing game. It was pretty funny in that respect. Which brings me to the other aspect of Turok, is that, so I did play this originally on the N64, and the default controls were that the C buttons were for movement and the control stick was for aiming. So it's completely, you know, reversed from, I guess, when Halo really came around and solidified what a shooter was going to be like. So I basically took the default controls and reversed them, so that D-pad on the left was movement and the control stick on the right was for aiming. That being said, it was still very janky, very hard to like move around. It was very, I don't know how to say, just very, very difficult, I guess. And also the other thing that I noticed is that the D-pad on the N64, the only other game that I know that uses it is Mischief Makers and Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards. But now they're using it here, and you know, usually you're just moving side to side in Mischief Makers and Kirby, you know, they're 2D style games. But here you have full 3D movement, and using a D-pad, especially the N64 D-pad, is very, very painful. And I would build on that by saying I beat the game maybe 3 or so days ago, and I feel like I might have given myself like nerve damage or something. Like my thumb is still kind of numb. And the reason for that is that it's not just the movement really, because the movement itself is whatever. So if you play for a extended period of time, it might be painful. But what really got me was the platforming in this game. And the platforming, platforming in the FPS, of course, because this is the 90s, everything was like, oh, 3D space, we have to add platforming to everything. And yeah, I died way. I probably died 100 times to just falling. And here's the problem with Turok as well, is that unlike games like Metroid Prime, where you like, respawn immediately and just take 10 damage, when you fall off a cliff in Turok, not where, it basically, you can, I mean, it's kind of fair in a way. Like, there is no falling damage in Turok. But if you fall off a ledge where there is nothing underneath and like a total, bottomless void, you die. And the way the game works is as a point system where you get these little non-respawning golden triangles, and if you get 100 of them, you get an extra life. So, and you also have these special areas where you get a purple triangle, it's like worth 10 triangles. So, when your lives are very limited, and you press, I think, the L button to jump in my case, and you're trying to, platform, and like I remember there's this one level in Doom 2 or something where you had to platform, and it was the most aggravating, frustrating thing is you move too fast, and like if you just move a little bit too fast, a little bit too slow, you fall off. But unlike Doom, where you might just respawn or something, you lose a life, and it's definitely one of the most frustrating platformings I've ever experienced, but also in a way the most fair, because there is kind of a learning curve. Again, you don't take any fall damage. And the other thing about Turok that I basically found out very late, well, not very late, but in this one section, and I think everyone knows it, in the third level, where you need to platform and jump across, like probably these, platforms that are just all floating in the middle of the sky for no reason. And there's probably at least, you have to do 20 perfect jumps basically. And again, if you just go a little bit too far off, you immediately fall down and die. And I wasn't willing to lose a life, because again, I only had like 3 lives. So if you lose one, like you could go the whole game, go through like 10 firefights and finally lose a life, and that's like, okay, that's fine. But if you just press the input button a little bit too much, you end up tripping over a ledge and then losing a life that way when you still have full health, and that feels terrible. And that happened to me quite a few times, especially when I was just in normal firefights, but I was in a high up place. And for some reason, I don't know why, but when I would double click like the left or right, it would make your character do like a little jump. And sometimes I'd be jumping totally fine, and because I was really nervous and intense, I would press the up D-pad too hard, so it would also activate like the left or right D-pad, and so I go diagonally when I want to go straight, and that resulted in my immediate death. Yeah, I haven't been this frustrated and aggravated and challenged for a long time, because retro games are just totally unforgiving. Despite that, I still had fun with it though, because again, the one trick the point I was getting to with Turok platforming is that you press forward first and then jump, and it's this crazy thing where I call it feather feet, where even if you're already off the ledge going forward, you can still kind of jump almost in the air. And so it's this kind of unfair advantage that you just have to keep in mind, that you have to basically run off the edge and then jump, is the way that they programmed it. And it kind of works. And once you get that, it does actually kind of work really well. It's just getting to that point and understanding it, that it doesn't make sense. That why is this man jumping in the air when he's already, because in a lot of games, in a lot of platforming scenarios, I've had issues where I would either overshoot or undershoot certain segments. And usually I would always, in a lot of different shooters or other games, I would hit the platform, but I would keep going, and then I would just have enough momentum to slide off the edge. But in this one, I was actually always undershooting. And so it's this cool thing where not only can you move forward and then jump while off the air or in the air, but once you cease your forward momentum, you drop like a stone vertically. Like you have no forward momentum after you jump, which honestly, again, kind of works to your favor, because it's very obvious when you need to stop jumping. And so another combination thing that I learned like much later in the game is that if you use your map in conjunction with your platforming, you can see exactly your position is and exactly where the level geometry is on this thing. Sometimes eyeballing it is easier, but sometimes there's this one level where it's like a dark room and you literally need to use the map. And that's where I figured out, oh, if I see my little yellow arrow, when it's jumping and when I'm over the platform directly, even though the geometry looks different than what it seems, and I just stop moving, I'll drop immediately down into the safe area. And it was very, very easy to do that. Again, with the D-pad, you can only move one direction. I mean, yes, you can kind of go on a diagonal, but it's kind of inconsistent and it did hurt my thumb after a while as well. Another cool thing I really liked is just speaking of platforming, you had these portal segments which were really interesting where you'll be going through a certain level and each level will have a series of multiple portals, these blue portals that just appear semi-randomly. They're like in fixed areas, so sometimes you have to wait around, sometimes you have to find an enemy for them to appear. And when you go inside of them, you have a series of a random chance of 2 different special levels where basically it's either a gimmick of platforming or, usually very rarely there are enemies in these areas. And it's just a series of platforming segments. And what's really nice about it is that if you fall down, it usually has this blue kind of ground so that it respawns you at the back of the thing. And usually these areas have a lot of extra ammo, a lot of extra golden triangle things for getting an extra life and things like that. Yeah. So Turok, I don't know. Overall, it's a very interesting game. But of course, I forgot to mention. So besides like the basic guys who fight you, there are of course dinosaurs that attack you, and later in the game they have chain guns attached to dinosaurs. And oh, that's the one weapon I forgot is that you also have a chain gun in this game, which was a little bit disappointing because it didn't use the same pistol ammo. I mean, I guess that's a good thing, but I was expecting it to be like another increased thing. But the chain gun basically has its own ammo and it has no of course no gun has any reload in this game, but the chain gun basically you kind of use up all of it, and when you ever pick up ammo for it, it's like a full 500 chamber round basically. And yeah, I don't know. This game, I forgot, also definitely has Doom-like secrets in it. So there's definitely different places to explore and, find special hidden things, trophies. Using the map is really good because it can show you where there are different, platforms below you that you can't see visually. Stuff like that. That's just really, really cool. And again, it's really weird because not only do the enemies, I mean, okay, most of them don't respawn, but also, again, your upgrades and your pickups don't respawn. So if you pick up a box of ammo or whatever, it doesn't come back. And it's a very new thing. So it makes Turok feel a lot more modern and a lot more, I don't know, advanced in certain ways, where it feels like a game world, where if you abuse the world or do something wrong in it, or you have an incentive really to explore everything, because once you get something, it doesn't come back. Like, that is it, and that is kind of the set state for that game, or for that area rather. But yeah, it's really interesting. In each area, basically, in order to get to the final area, you're going to need to get all the keys. The 8th key is actually made out of 4 different keys, while each area is usually 3 keys to access the next level or something. What I also forgot, there are also backpacks in this game, which once you get that, until you die, you basically will be able to carry double ammo for every single gun that you own, which is really cool. And again, you become a lot more strategic, that you use the weapons that are always full rather than the ones that are empty, because you need to always constantly keep picking up ammo in order to basically always replenishing your stocks, essentially. But yeah, some of the bosses in this game, you have this one at the beginning in the 3rd level, which has these 2 jeeps basically, and you basically take them out by strafing around them, and then you fight this guy who honestly was very, very difficult, because even if you did strafe sideways, he would still catch up to you, so you had to strafe diagonally and shoot him from afar. And yes, there is like respawning ammo on the boss area, but you're always running away from him, so you can't really be looking at him, and it's very difficult to pick up ammo when you're running backwards. Again, some of these keys are very easy to find, some of them are straightforward, some of them are very difficult. Another boss that was really cool, this giant like moth mutant bug thing. It was really, really nifty. I really liked the motion of the combat, the fact that it would basically knock down a series of walls and then, increase its movement speed once it had a bigger area to move in. And then you had the final boss, which two final bosses, honestly, which was kind of interesting. You had one which was very apt for Turok, which is a giant T-Rex with a giant laser beam on its head and mechanized arms and stuff. It was actually really cool. And then I thought, okay, cool, that's the end of the game. But then there's actually one more boss after that, which is even harder, and he's called the Campaigner. And I don't know, I just thought it was so funny because he literally looks like Quake Man. Turok himself is like just like a Native American dude. Like, he doesn't have a special design or special armor. He's literally just like an Indian guy with feathers in his head. Like, there is nothing nuanced or interesting about this guy's design. Like, he's just like an Indian guy. And I don't know, it always kind of made me thought of Prey. I'm not sure if the same team worked on that, but it's the same idea, except that, Native Indian guy, he actually looks modern, while this one is just like whatever. And I love him. So he'll say, "I am Turok," whenever you gain a life or you respawn, basically. And it's really weird how his body moves. It's kind of like, hey, look, we have bones. We can animate using bones. Isn't that so cool? And so his body is very like, I know, ragdolly when he spawns in, and looks very kind of silly but weird in the same way. But yeah, everything about the presentation of this game is very unique, very interesting. It's a really great boomer shooter. I'm kind of surprised more people don't talk about it, especially in the age when people are looking for games that are Doom-like. This was a lot of fun, and I think something else that really benefited it was the use of not only the sound effects but the music, and I think also the animation. Like, when I started out the game, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this game's gonna work because the movement's kind of weird. But as soon as I shot my first arrow, the sound it made when it impacted someone, and the fact they made this kind of like bleeding out sound. And that's the thing about this game, it's very serious. That it's very, I mean, in the sense that it's very rare to have an M-rated game on the N64, and so for this to be an M-rated game, it took itself like very seriously in a way. And so like they'll be like, you can go from red blood to green blood or no blood, and so you can tell like that old school 90s style censoring, or making it family friendly in some way, is very endearing to me. But yeah, the whole game, it's the sound effects, the design, the fact that sometimes when you shoot guys, they'll bleed out from their neck and have these special animations. Every time someone dies, they have these really great screams. They sound like Wilhelm screams if they were like re-recorded for modern day. They sound amazing, honestly. They sound great. Like, it's really enjoyable to shoot a guy and have him react to it. It's really, really well done and interesting. And there's a lot of different death animation. And again, the other thing that helps the presentation of Turok is the music. I don't know what it is, but I mean, it is kind of jungle core in the sense that the BPM is usually very, very high. So there's lots of use of drums, ambience. What's also really interesting, there's a dedicated cave and water theme. So it doesn't matter what level you're in, it won't make like a water version or a cave version of that song like in Banjo-Kazooie, which is, I mean, I think really, really well done in terms of its composition. But in this game, it just kind of does the same thing over and over again, but I don't think it ever gets boring or stale. I don't know what it was, but the music in this game, along with its presentation, just, the only word I can use is immersive. And I don't know, maybe it's 64-bit games, but it's because it's so close to being, recognizable, but still in that form of weird polygonal abstraction. I really, really enjoy it. I don't know what it is, and I really need to like maybe look at this game or SC4 games in general more because I love the environment. I love the audio design. I love the fact that you have this visual representation, which is almost perfect, but the audio is very detailed and very essentially, HD. Essentially, there's nothing weird or compressed or weird about it like Shenmue or. Um, but yeah, I played this game a lot. I hurt my thumb a lot, but it was honestly worth it. It just has a lot of things going for it that are very well designed and very well made. And I thought, okay, cool. This is an N64 shooter. I bought it at like a yard sale or something. It'll probably be fun for an hour and then I'll move on to something else. But I really, really, really enjoyed this game. Like, I'm shocked at how much I enjoyed it. Yeah, Turok is not just another shooter on the N64. It's definitely better than GoldenEye. I can tell you that. It's better than GoldenEye. Um, Definitely, if you're a fan of Time Splitters, if you're a fan of course, GoldenEye, I would definitely give this game a shot. It's actually really good, and I'm sure I just the other Turok games aren't quite as good, but yeah, I was very surprised and very impressed by Turok, and I think I've talked about it way more than I think needs to be said because again, it's one of those games that isn't really talked about. Like I know they had a few sequels on the 360, like a Perfect Dark Zero, not a remaster, but trying to recapture the same franchise and it just didn't really take off. But this original one again is super super solid, and yeah, I think that's all I have to say about it. Anyway, guys, with that being said, I will see you all later and take care. Bye.